Ladies and gentlemen, today is a celebration of timeless elegance and performance. Join me on this journey as we present the 209 series Mercedes CLK, uncover its hidden treasures, and also look at the 10 most common problems that trouble this automotive icon. And while we're at it, we're going to look at a few accessories that you're going to love too. Number one is faulty window regulators, especially in the back. They're a pain to do because this car does not have rear doors, so basically you have to pull the whole seat and all that. But the good news is you don't have to buy new regulators. You can just buy a few gears and it usually fixes your problem. I'm gonna leave links in the description. Number two is the mass airflow sensor. It's gonna do all kinds of crazy stuff. It's gonna get you rough idle, non-start, could cause a whole lot of other troubles that I don't even want to go into. But the good news is mass airflow sensors are pretty inexpensive, and then you could even get lucky and just clean it. Number three, and I'm starting to see a pattern here. So these guys are slowly approaching 20 years. So everything that's made out of plastic, rubber, it's gonna break. There's no question about it. Also, since the lower end trims of these cars, so not the 500s, not the 550s, but the 270s, 320s, 350s are so freaking cheap. Most people do not maintain them properly, especially here in the States. I see them ride and die. You know, they're just gonna drive them until they're done, and then they just throw them out, buy another one for $2,000. No problem there. But here's the thing: there's some basic maintenance things that you really need to look at while buying a car like this. So number three, as I was saying, is serpentine belts. It's a pretty easy and cheap fix. So let's look at number four. Number four. Ignition coils. Yep, those are fun. I had to change a whole set of spark plugs because I had the wonderful idea to look at why that one exact cylinder is giving me misfire code. So I just figured it would be a good idea to swap them to ignition coils, and voila, it was a different cylinder that was giving me the code. So what I did was just replace every single ignition coil. Thank God it's not too expensive. You can get it done from AutoZone. Number five. Number five, that's brakes, rotors, and pads. Rotors, more than likely, if it's, you know, a low maintenance car that you bought, rotors are probably going to be warped, so that's going to cause shaking while braking at high speeds or whatever. It's going to give you a whole kinds of weird noises. You know, that old squealing noise, that means the pad is done. Thankfully, these are not too expensive either. If a caliper is shot, I highly recommend you not buy a new one, because calipers are basically just a big piece of cast iron, so all you need is a rebuild kit and you should be good to go. Rotors are like 50 to 100 bucks each, and pads are super cheap. I highly recommend getting ceramic pads because they're not that much more expensive. You get no brake dust and they're just quiet and wonderful. Number this many. Yeah, we're getting back to broken plastic and rubber. Vacuum lines. Vacuum lines are fun because they're dirt cheap to replace and fix, but they're an absolute pain to diagnose. So get a smoke machine. I'll leave one in the description. Number seven. Whew. So we've had this heat wave throughout the world pretty much right now, and AC is a pain not to have. Here's the thing. AC's on every single Mercedes that comes from around this era, like late 2000s, mid 2000s. Yeah, they have a whole plethora of issues. One thing is being the smell, because they have an evap core that doesn't really vent well. I have a video on how to fix, or at least remedy that somewhat. Yeah, number 8 is a faulty throttle position sensor. Could be a fun fix. It's just worth looking into when you're buying it. Number 9, yeah, suspension. So back to the aging plastics and rubber, bushings, control arms, sway bars, links, all of that will probably need to get fixed if you bought a car from someone who barely did their oil changes right. Thankfully, it's actually pretty fun to do, and it's not really difficult, and it's not even that expensive. I actually do have a video on how to refresh your suspension. I did replace my old school rubber bushings with polyurethane ones, which are really fun, and they don't really need to be replaced for a long time. I'm gonna put a video on here, yeah. And let's move on to number 10. Number 10 is fuel pumps, which is especially fun because this guy has 2 of them. We have an actual fuel pump behind the passenger seat and a fuel sender unit behind the driver's seat. That should be a left side for us driving on the right. So the one behind me is a center unit because the fuel pump kind of looks like a donut or whatever. So there's this bump in the middle in between the two halves of the tank, because that's where the drivetrain goes through. And then this fuel sender unit on the left will send it over to the right, and then that's, or the other way around, I don't even know, but there's two pieces of equipment here. They always leak. So if you go behind the car, take a nice smell at the rear left wheel, driver's side US, right? If you smell anything that resembles gas or diesel in Europe, because we don't get diesels here, you might want to pull the two seats in the back. It's super easy. There's like two clips and then two bolts for each rear seat. Just hop them up, and then there's this circular plate that has like a dozen bolts. It's not too bad to pull off, so you can see if there's any kind of pooling of gas or diesel on top of any of the two, you're busted. You're going to need probably new pumps, new pressure sensor, because that's built in, new fuel filter that's built into the sender, and new gaskets. Link in the description. So we've done 10 so far, but there's a few other tiny things that are really important when you're looking at a car, especially if you're looking at a convertible. The one thing that's always broken in every single one of these guys is the roof, the soft top. In the back, there's two water bags that tend to protrude. That's on both sides of the windshield in the back. And also, there's a seam that separates. It's basically something that's glued, and I really don't understand how this is not a recall from Mercedes. Shame on you guys, but anyway. You want to look at that, because replacing a top is very expensive, and compared to like a low-end 350 that could, you could buy for a couple grand for a new top might be hard to justify. So definitely look at those. Number two that I see, every single posting you see is like, yeah, everything works, everything's perfect. The roof doesn't work. The roof doesn't work. There's a whole bunch of micro switches that do a sequence. And look at, like, hey, did number one do its thing? Okay, then number two can fire, all that stuff. So the most common problem that causes a roof not to open is by far, other than a hydraulic pump issue, is a tiny micro switch back in the trunk partition. The trunk partition is this plastic thing that should roll backwards to make room for the roof when you fold it into the trunk. And that's the problem. If that thing is not open, there's no room and it won't open. But the problem is, even if it's open, it's the micro switch that's not getting triggered, because more than likely the two struts that push the separator back are old and done. So they just don't have the power to make the switch click. Easy fix, 30 bucks and you're done. And unless you bought the Xenon versions, there's probably one more thing that you definitely have to replace. And that is the headlights, bulbs at least. Headlights can be very murky, which can be restored, but yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be like a permanent solution. So what you need to do is get LED bulbs. I've done a video on how to do that in the description. If you're buying any older car, especially if it's a Mercedes, there's a few things that you always want to have in your garage. Number one is a quality set of Torx bits. So you need to have the actual Torx sizes 5 to 45 or even 50. You probably want to have the ones that are tamper-proof, so with the hole inside of it. And then you want to get the e-Torx bits as well, which are the inverted versions, like the female versions of it. And I think we got to the number one most important thing that you just cannot not have if you own or even just think about buying a Mercedes. And that is one of these guys. This is a Foxwell N530 Elite. It is a scanner that will run you between $100 and $200. And I'm going to tell you that I have 4 scanners, and I always kept buying a nicer one. This thing, I got there. Like, this is what you need. The key difference is this doesn't just read codes. It doesn't just look into the modules in the car. It's actually able to clear the issues that you would go to a dealer and pay them to have it cleared for you. And also, which is the main selling point, these are bi-directional, which means it doesn't just read the stuff that the car gives it. It's going to tell the car what to do. So there's certain things when you're testing, let's say, an evap valve or whatever, you can actually trigger those things, like tell them, hey, close this, open that. Or like you're working on hydraulic suspension, you can do the rodeo test. It would do the whole thing. Like, it's basically a dealer level thing and it's like 200 bucks, I highly recommend not to buy anything else but this. There are people that are like diehard fans of the original Mercedes Star or DAS systems, and they buy these old piece of shit laptops from China for hundreds of dollars, several hundreds of dollars in fact, and you know, they buy like a cloned interface. I would not do that, but these things are magic. Links in the description. If you do like German cars and you'd like to see more, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. Look around. I definitely do have a Mercedes problem, and I'll try to keep sharing that with you. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.